actually remembers to give inspiration? What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and today I'm talking about the inspiration mechanic in D&D 5th edition and my house rules for making it better. So as a refresher, for those of you that don't know, inspiration, rules as written, is a mechanic where Dungeon Masters can give out a point of inspiration as a reward for good roleplay. Specifically in the Player's Handbook, it's tied to your personality trait, bond, flaw, ideal, those things that you codify during the character creation process, and it's a reward for playing into those aspects of your character. And so it specifically calls out that, but broadly, role playing well and playing your character well. And so the Dungeon Master can give you a point of inspiration, and you can only have 1 point of inspiration at any given time. So once you have inspiration, you can gain no more. And then you can use inspiration in one of two ways. Either to give yourself advantage on an ability check, attack roll, or saving throw, or give it to another player if they do what you did to initially earn inspiration, which, that's cool. If they're doing it really well, then I don't know why the Dungeon Master isn't just giving them inspiration, why the players need to, but that, whatever. So inspiration is difficult for a number of reasons. One, Dungeon Master has to remember to give it out, and I don't. As a Dungeon Master, I never remember to give out inspiration. I have great role players at my table, and you know what happens when they start role playing really well? I get caught up in role playing with them because they're role playing really, really well, and I don't think about a mechanic of take a point of inspiration. So that's something me as a Dungeon Master, and why I kind of looked to house ruling inspiration in a way that is, I think, more fun, more engaging, yada, yada, yada. So the first house rule, the first tweak to make to inspiration is rules as written. It gives you advantage on a roll, which means you have to spend your point of inspiration before the roll in order to have advantage on that roll. Let people use it after the roll. If they beef a roll that they really wanted to pass, let them spend inspiration then to just get a re-roll. That makes sense to me. I get that if they know it's a really important roll, they could spend it before the roll. But yeah, just let people spend it afterwards. But that's not even really like a house rule. That's just, that's how every table that I've played at that's used inspiration has played it. And I've never had a Dungeon Master say, you got to use that before the roll. So anyway, my house rules for how I run my home table. I set a table up behind me in the room that I'm in, and we all sit around and we roll dice and have a great time. The way that I run inspiration at my table involves 3 house rules. 3? Yeah, 3. So, first off, everybody starts with a point of inspiration at the beginning of the session. I don't got to deal with it. I can give more. Like, you can have more than 1 point of inspiration. I have little tokens that, everybody gets one at the start of the session. And then if you do a cool thing, I might give you more. But everybody starts with a point of inspiration. At the end of the session, it resets to 1. So you can't hoard over multiple sessions. But everybody has a point of inspiration starting out. That way, you can engage with these mechanics. And if I'm having an off night and forget to give out inspiration, it's not that big a deal. Everybody still has inspiration to spend. So that is the first house rule that I use, is everybody starts with 1 point and can earn more, and they can give it to each other if they want, like the rules state. But yeah, you always have a point of inspiration unless you burn through it during the session. You can run out of inspiration. So that's my initial house rule. And the reason for this is, like I said, I'm a bad Dungeon Master when it comes to remembering to give out inspiration. I like role playing with my players and getting lost in the story and engaged with the story that we're telling together. And just there are some Dungeon Masters that do that and can remember to give out inspiration. I'm not that Dungeon Master. I need a crutch that allows me to, make sure that everybody is getting to engage with all mechanics of the game without having to wait on my dumb butt to give them a point of inspiration. So that's the reasoning for it. And also allowing people to earn more than 1 point of inspiration. I don't really like the mechanic of once you have inspiration, you can't gain any more. Because, you might have a player that's just on a roll that night and you want to give them more inspiration, but you can't because they already have it. And if they haven't had an opportunity to spend it, then that can be doubly frustrating. So everybody starts with 1 and can earn however many they want. But at the end of the session, it resets to 1. That way they're not hoarding over the course of like 12 sessions, and then they hit like a major boss fight, and all of a sudden your table has a collective like 37 points of inspiration, and they're just advantage every roll for the whole combat. Before we continue with the video, if you are enjoying, be sure to like it down below and subscribe to the channel. It does help out a whole heck of a lot. You do not understand how much it helps by liking, subscribing to the channel, and also commenting. Engage with the algorithm. Engage with it. If you want to be part of the conversation surrounding the episodes, we also have a link to our Discord down below in the description where you can join. Come on over there. Hang out. We talk about food. We talk about tabletop games. We talk about board games and video games and movies and all kinds of stuff. It's a great time. And we have a Patreon, patreon.com/thegeekpantheon. If you want to support the channel financially, that is the place to do it. And I appreciate everybody that elects to do that. You are all wonderful. Anyway, moving on. The next 2 house rules are both stolen because good dungeon masters steal things. So David Nett on Twitter @DavidNett had a thread back in 2018 where he introduced the I know a guy rule. For those of you that don't know, it is meant to recreate that moment in Empire Strikes Back, the Star Wars movie, where the Millennium Falcon needs repairs and they don't know what they're going to do. And Han Solo is like, oh, I know a guy, Lando Calrissian. He's the governor, mayor, king of Cloud City. So let's roll over there. He's a friend, maybe. And so you introduce this new NPC that can solve the problem that is present for the player characters. And then the player that has created this character, because that's what you do, is you have them give a rough idea of who this person is and the nature of their relationship to the PC, but keep it as vague as possible, just so you have more space to play. And then have them make a charisma roll to see if they're friendly or not. Because, you know, spoilers for the 1980 film Empire Strikes Back, but Lando double-crossed him. So that could be a possibility. It could be like a friendly face, but a foul nature, or the inverse. So that keeps things engaging and interesting. So I took David Nett's I Know a Guy rule and attached it to inspiration. If you have a point of inspiration and you want to introduce a brand new NPC to the story, and you can invoke the I Know a Guy rule by spending a point of inspiration. You get to introduce a brand new NPC of your creation, and then we roll to see if they like you or not. And it's primarily like the starting nature. You know, it's are they friendly? Are they hostile? Are they neutral? It's not like a guarantee that the interaction is going to go poorly when you go to meet up with them. I had a player use this, and she basically said that they were trying to bribe some city watchmen to like leave a gap in the city watch patrol so they could do a job. And she spent a point of inspiration to say, I know a guy. I grew up with a guy from the neighborhood who became a city watchman, and I'm going to go talk to him. And she rolled charisma, and she rolled poorly. So I decided the result of that is, we grew up together, but I'm a city watchman now, and I'm dedicated to that cause. And like, I believe in the rules and like the letter of the law and all that stuff. So he became a competent, very rigid city watchman instead of somebody that's like, oh yeah, we grew up together, I'll bend the rules for you. So that was kind of the binary that we were looking at with that charisma check. So it doesn't guarantee failure. It just simply establishes the initial tone of the interaction and makes things easier or more difficult for the player trying to do the interaction. And I love it. I love that she was able to come up with this brand new NPC on the fly for me, including with a name, because I hate naming NPCs on the fly. And so I love this rule. I love that it allows the players to help create the world, and you get to establish relationships and start making a web of relationships and NPCs. And you could have another player character say, oh, I think it would make sense that maybe I would know that NPC too. And that can just be a tangential thing. Don't let it muddy the waters with the actual I know a guy mechanic. But I love this rule. I've seen it in practice at the table, and it's great. And the next inspiration house rule that I use at my table is I steal the flashbacks mechanic from Blades in the Dark, kind of. So essentially, I tend to run games that are, I don't want to say they're all heists, but they are very like job quest heavy. You'll get a quest, you'll get a job to go do a thing, and you have some prep time before you go do the thing. And I basically tell my players, okay, so you can either make a check before the job, before the quest, before what you're going to go do, to prepare. And, you can establish all this stuff. Like, you get to pick the parameters, the skill, all that kind of stuff. And great, you're preparing. Or you can forego this role and have the opportunity of, during the quest, during the job, to spend a point of inspiration to invoke a flashback where a situation comes up where it would be really great if you would have thought about this ahead of time and prepped for it. And sure, spend a point of inspiration, explain to me the flashback, what skill is involved in it, make your check, and then you might succeed where you would have failed. And so the idea being, you're trying to sneak through the city and a city watchman is approaching. And it's like, crap. It would have been really helpful if we would have paid off this city watchman before we were doing the job. Okay, spend a point of inspiration, flashback. Now you make the check, whether it's persuasion, deception, intimidation, whatever check you want to make, to try and bribe this city watchman. And if it succeeds, great. If it fails, bummer. And so, yeah, but you have that opportunity in that moment. And a big thing with Blades in the Dark that they lay out with the flashback system that is also applicable here, you can't alter the timeline. So you can't say, oh, that city watchman is coming along. It would have been really handy if we would have killed him earlier in the day. Well, no, you've already seen him. He is alive. So what kind of check are you going to make to stop him now? It doesn't have to be a social check like Bridemoon. Did you set up a trap along his route to where, he's going to take one more step and his foot's going to be caught in a snare and he's going to go flying up in the air. You can get creative with it. Or you could have paid off a different city watchman to go intercept him. And then they run the corner and oh, hello, let's go this way. So players have total freedom with the flashbacks as long as they don't alter the timeline and create a paradox. So I really like the flashback mechanic. I've seen it in action as well, and it works really well, and it keeps the players on their toes and thinking about how could I affect this situation with my inspiration. A way that you could tweak this is you could let them make the checks to prep for the job and then still hold on to the ability to do a flashback during the job as well. I just like to create that choice where, you could have total control over the check you're making to prepare for the job, or you can forego that control in order to possibly have a clutch moment where you were a genius and thought about something way far ahead of time that nobody could have seen coming. So that's the kind of balance that I try to introduce with it. So that's the third house rule of inspiration that I do. The next one is also stolen. I don't know why I said just the next two. Most of the things that in my games are stolen. This is simply taking from the Genesis / Star Wars role-playing game from Fantasy Flight Games. And they have destiny points, story points, is what they call them in the various games. And basically it's an active economy where there is a fixed amount of points, and some of them belong to the dungeon master, some belong to the players. And when one side spends one, it belongs to the other side. So if you have 3 player story points and 2 game master story points, the game master spends one. Now the game master only has 1. The players have 4. You understand. So I don't do it with that active economy because I'm the dungeon master. I could just introduce stuff as I want to. But that's the reason I give everybody 1 to start off with. And the things that you can do with story points in these games are you can upgrade your checks, which is effectively, advantage, or you can introduce narrative elements to justify actions. So the idea being that if you are in a tavern and somebody runs in and kidnaps somebody and runs out the door and they hop on a horse and take off, and you ask the dungeon master, are there other horses out in front of the tavern? Dungeon Master can look, you say, I don't know. Are there? And look at the story point pool. The players can flip a story point to say, yes, there are horses that we can hop on. So the same idea applies. If there's something that is in question that is not established in the world, and the players say, can we have this thing? Be like, I don't know. Can you? And they can spend a point of inspiration to declare, yes, there is a group of horses that we can hop onto. Yes, the train hasn't left the station yet. Yes, there is a window that we could potentially climb in. That kind of thing. To once again give them the opportunity to affect the game world. So that is my 4 house rules plus a bonus one at the very beginning. 4.5 house rules for D&D 5th edition's inspiration mechanic. What do you all think about them? Let me know down below in the comments. Do you all have any house rules for inspiration that you use at your table in order to remember to give it out as a Dungeon Master, dagnabbit, but also just to give more interesting ways for players to utilize the mechanic and use it in an interesting way? Let me know down below. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been Eric, and I will see you next time.